Hi, Mike Napoleon here with SuperSpeed Golf. On March 23rd, we had the opportunity to work with one of the fastest players on the LPGA Tour, Nanna Koerstz Madsen. We were out in Salt Lake City at my buddy Tyler Standiford's lab at Utah Valley University, and we got to look at everything from a detailed physical assessment, ground force data, biomechanics data, and everything else that could be affecting Nanna's speed and power. We were able to, over the course of that day, identify some key points that can help her optimize her speed and power. Let's take a look. The first thing we always do when we're working with a player, whether it's a tour player or an amateur, is sit down and actually have a conversation about what are the things that we can help them with. You know, Nanna's game off the tee is very strong. It's definitely one of the strengths of her game, one of the things that allows her to be an elite player out on the LPGA Tour. So Nanna expressed to us that some of the things that were bothering her the most in her game were actually more in her approach shots to greens, wedge shots, but, you know, and she has a lot of wedge shots because she hits the ball a long way. Now, of course, we analyzed everything, but we set some goals for Nanna as well. You know, as far as her tee game goes, you know, she was right in that 102 to 103 mile an hour range during the assessment, which is a little bit on the low end for Nanna. So we really want to get that back up in that 108 to 110 range. And I actually set a goal for her with, you know, in about 4 to 6 months of training to actually get that thing north of 110 miles an hour off the tee and get those ball speeds into the mid 160s. You know, we saw like our highest ball speeds at the assessment were right in that like 155 range, which again, competitively on the LPGA Tour is great. But if we can add about 10 miles an hour of ball speed there, which she definitely has in the tank, we're going to see some big things. Then we went into looking a little bit more at what was going on with her iron game. We actually even assessed her wedge shots. Now, looking at her iron game, she was even a tiny bit slower with some of the iron shots relative to driver than we would have liked to see. She was hovering right in that like 80 to 82 range with a 7-iron. And, you know, with the speed she can produce with driver, we really want to see that jump up more into at least that 85 range. And if we can, over the course of that goal period, get up into the high 80s with a 7-iron, that's going to be huge for her and the ability to be competitive out on the tour. Now, some really cool things that we saw that kind of balanced into what we were looking at here. Number one, Nanna's physical screen was very strong. She is extremely powerful. Her primary power source was core strength, core rotational ability, followed very subtly by vertical jump ability, and her weakest power source was upper body strength. Now, this is a common thing that we'll see with LPGA Tour players, but in Nanna's case, we really need to maximize some of those rotational torque abilities and what she's doing in her swing. Also, we saw that as she got to the red club in the system, because she does use a driver that's more like a standard men's driver, so we have her in our men's set. When she was getting to the red club was significantly slower, down more around that 100, 101 mile an hour range than what we were typically seeing with her lighter weight clubs in the set. I mean, Nanna can swing the C club in the high 120s, and she can swing that green club, you know, typically very close to 120 miles an hour. But when we got to that red club, that's something that we were seeing. Now, that's a common piece that we will see when that red club dips a little bit too far. We know that there can be some strength deficiencies and also grip strength deficiencies that can really be of a cause of that type of a situation. Now, we did see that with Nanna. So some of the things that we need to work on, you know, there are some strength things that we're recommending with her trainer, and then grip strength was another big one because we really want to be able to see, you know, some of those big speeds happen with some of these heavier clubs. Now, that's also connected to the iron shots. Irons are heavier than your driver, and being able to control and stabilize an iron throughout the whole golf swing requires actually more grip strength typically than it would with the driver. So anyway, these are some neat stuff that we're going. I want to show you some of the biomechanics and ground force data next, and then we'll get to what we actually did to help Nanna get better. Okay, now let's take a look at how Nanna was using the ground. And we saw some really interesting things here, especially because Nanna's biggest power source is that rotational kind of motion that would relate to torque when we start to look at ground force. Now, here's one of the before swings we did with driver, and you're going to see some very interesting things here. creates a good amount of lateral force early in the backswing, which I always like to see. But then all of a sudden we get to peak torque before we get to transition of the swing. We get to peak vertical before we get to the even transition of the golf swing. Now, I've only ever seen this a couple times, and it's with players that, again, tend to over-rotate the backswing, and then it's almost like they don't know what to do with where they're pushing on the ground in order to really initiate it. So if I go to like where I want to see, you're going to see a secondary vertical peak, which we'd always see in these players as well. That secondary vertical peak happens kind of where I would expect it to happen, somewhere halfway through the downswing. However, it's a whole lot lower than this primary vertical peak that's in the backswing. Torque is the same way. Like, this torque number is low for a very rotational player, but then as she's after her post-transition peak, is like right in this area, and it's almost zero. So this is definitely a case of a player who needs to work on timing and point of application of force in order to allow the ground to help them create more speed, power, and consistency instead of actually hinder them in that process. So let's pull it out. Let's take a look at a swing after we did some drills with Nanna to work on this, and the results were really cool. Now, these drills did reduce the amount of lateral force she was creating a little bit, but you can see now how these curves are much more in the right place, if you will. So post-transition torque, it went up a good bit. So this went up, over 10%, but it also started to happen on, during that first part of the downswing and transition. We also see vertical force. Now, vertical force stayed pretty well the same. She had a lot of vertical force to start. We want more, but now we're peaking that, in the downswing, and after impact, she still kind of gets that little double peak, but now we're actually having these forces help Nanna in the process of her golf swing, as opposed to kind of occur at a point where she's not going to get any benefit out of that. So very cool stuff, really good work that day, and we're expecting to see the magnitudes of these forces improve along with the timing over the first part of this program. So here are Nanna's programs and priority list for this next little bit of time. The first thing that we looked at, again, and it's been a theme throughout this entire video, is grip strength. We're really looking to optimize grip strength and get those numbers up. She was kind of in those low 30 kilogram numbers with both hands. We really want to see that 40 plus. So we're recommending our level 2 squeeze protocol, and we want her to do that 3 to 4 times a week. This isn't going to be a huge time commitment, but it's maybe the biggest single thing that's going to help Nanna improve all of the different pieces that she's looking at. That's priority 1. Priority 2 is going to be our ground force level 2 protocol. Now, the ground force level 2 protocol is all about, maximizing timing and point of application of force. Now, timing of force is probably the number one thing for Nanna overall that we saw in that ground force video. We're going to try to really make sure that these forces are happening at the right time to make sure that that's optimizing, getting those forces to actually helping her optimize swing speed and power. The next thing that we're going to be doing is an overspeed program. Now, her overspeed program is going to be a little different. We're going to be adding in a 4th club. She's going to be using the men's set and the C club. So every drill she's going to do is going to be using all 4 of those implements during the training. We're really trying to max out, and the real target goal here is getting those red club swings as fast as we possibly can. The last thing we're doing with Nanna is a ball speed application protocol. And if you haven't tried our ball speed application protocols, I highly recommend them. This is probably the number one way that we can start to apply these swing speed gains to ball speed and get those effective gains out on the golf course. Now, we know Nanna's been playing really well the last few weeks, and we can't wait to see some of the results. I hope to be sending some replies and updates to this to see some of those numbers, and as she starts to hit some of those new personal bests and accomplish her goals. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video about Nanna Koerstz Madsen.